The King Cam Ujumbe Podcast. Ujumbe means message. And today's message is the three crowns, Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush before the divide. Yeah, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the three crowns, Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush before the divide. See, before there were kingdoms, there was the river, right? Before there was nations, there was a sacred memory that they all had together, right? And before we were divided, we as a people was one. And so, yeah, we're going to get into it. This is King Cam Ujumbe Podcast. Ujumbe means message and get you something to write on, something to write with. And we're going to enjoy. We're going to have a good time. This is not just a history lesson as usual. This is a remembering. This is a journey. We are learning together. We're taking this to the next level. This is a shared legacy of shared information between three ancient African civilizations who didn't just exist side by side. They formed one sacred arc, one union, and that's Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush. They were one people. See, what happens is the Europeans and the Arabs would like to try to make them bitter enemies and always at odds. Okay, they try to make them rivals. They weren't rivals. They were reflections. They were mirrors of a unified spiritual system, flowing like the Nile between them. So they were connected, and at the center of that unity stood three sacred crowns, each one carrying a frequency. It carried knowledge. It carried responsibility, and whoever wore that crown they carried the weight of the nation and the ancestors. So if you ever thought or believed that Nile Valley culture, Nile Valley history was separated or scattered, you was wrong. You was wrong. So this is why we're here. This is why we do what we do. And so this is your moment. This is your time to remember something. So let's return. Let's get back to the business, to the knowledge, right? So here are the questions. Here are the questions today. The essential question: what spiritual and cultural and political foundations connected Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush before the rise of empires and colonial borders? See, before the Berlin Conference of the late 1800s, they were kind of connected, right? And so how did each of these three crowns express divine authority, and what did kingship mean across the civilizations, across the nation? Okay. And what caused the eventual divide? What caused that divide among these sacred nations, and who benefited from that fragmentation? Who benefited, right? And why is it essential to remember the unity of the three crowns today? And what can we as a people reclaim from their example? See, it's one thing just to learn history and get information or whatever, but it's another thing to do something about it, to do something with it, right? That's why we're learning. It's not just us housing a lot of information and gathering a lot of information just to say that we know it. Knowledge is one thing, application is another, right? Let's go. So, today we're going to talk about the land remembers the three crowns, symbols of cosmic order, shared temples, shared spirit, when the divide came, reuniting the ark, and I have a few book recommendations. That's how we're going to do it. That's what we're doing. We're going to talk about the land remembers the three crowns, symbols of cosmic order, shared temple, shared spirit, when the divide came, reunited the ark, and book recommendations. Now, this is this segment, the three crowns. This segment here is under our Echoes of Nubia miniseries. Okay, it's a miniseries that will come out almost every Thursday as a recording. Okay, this is a recording. This is not one of our chaotic live stream sessions or whatever. This is a recording, y'all. Okay, don't be alarmed. I just sneak a fast one on you. But yes, this is something that we'll roll out almost every Thursday or every other Thursday. and we this gives us time to lean into ancient Sudan. Okay, I feel it's necessary. What happens is we would hyper focus on Kemet and Kemetic science, and we forget about Nubia. So we're gonna do this Echoes of Nubia miniseries almost every Thursday, right? And so, of course, we have our four pillars. Pillar one, Ethiopia, the source of the sanctuary. Number two, Kemet, the blueprint sacred civilization. Number three, this is where this episode falls under Kush and Nubia, the corridor of continuity. We have a playlist for that. Check it out. And pillar four, the hidden code, spiritual science symbols, and the esoteric legacy of Africa. All right. Now, the land, remember, see, we have to understand in Kemet, the Nile is called the Happy River, right? And so it is a living archive. It's the oldest keeper of memory. See, we have to remember and realize that in Africa, in African customs, in African cosmology, water is a conduit. Water connects the physical realm to the spiritual realm. And it also connects memories. It connects thoughts and prayers and all those things. That's why libation, we use what? Some kind of liquid for libation, right? And so from Lake Tana to in the Ethiopian highlands, through the golden sands, Nubia into the sacred floodplains of Kemet, the Nile is flowing. But now, look at this. Check this out, because I know, shout out to Brother Mo. He loves maps, and so do I. But like Lake Tana is in Ethiopia, and the White Nile it starts from Kenya. Shout out to the family Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, all the way up to Sudan, and it's connected in Khartoum. Okay, and then it goes up north. That is the Happy River. That is the Nile River. And get this, just a review. The Nile River is over 4,100 miles. Okay, and it's so big. The Nile Valley is so vast, is that you can put the United States in there, still have over 1,000 miles left. You still have room. So, and it's the only river that goes from the south to the north. It goes all the way from south, and it connects the Congo, it connects the Sudan, all the way up north. Okay. Now, that is a sacred river. It's a different kind of river. It hits different. And so the Western world, since we're on Lake Victoria, the Western world will call this body of water down here Lake Victoria, the one that's in Kenya and Tanzania, right? But people of the land, get this. This is what I like. The people of the land would call it Nalu Bali, Nalu Bali, the mother of the gods. They would call it Nainza, 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 large body of water. Now, shout out to the fam in Kenya, Tanzania, and those areas. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I told you I'm country is corn, so it may not come out right. But so Nalu Bali, the mother of the gods, Nai Nyanza, large body of water. And this is my favorite. This is my favorite. Mosi Oa Tunya. Mosi Oya Tunya. Here's why. It's called the smoke that thunders. They call Lake Victoria the smoke that thunders. Why? Because it's a large waterfall and the mist is going up in the air and it looks like smoke and it's so loud it sounds like thunder. The smoke that thunders, and I want to see that. Yeah, I want to see it myself. I want to take a road trip, as I mentioned many times before. I want to take a road trip. I don't know what it would take or whatever, but I want to go from here, from Mose Oyatunya, all the way up to Cairo. I want to do that. I want to do that. Let me know if you want a road trip like that too. Like, comment below. Let's go. Now, the Happy River. Symbolized happy, or the happy river is symbolized as a man tying upper and lower Egypt together, tying the Nile River together. And the king, the Insubiti, whoever had that title, the king of the north and south, in on his throne, he would have two sides of the river tying the happy river together. That shows that he has the ability and power to tie the nations together, to keep everybody in balance and keep everybody together. And my family many years ago gave me a happy plaque here. They gave it to me. I thought it was pretty cool. It shows that it shows happy holding the reeds and holding things together, and it symbolizes, I guess, it symbolizes me as a father and as a parent holding the family together, keeping everybody keeping everybody together, right? Right. So I really appreciate that. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so the Insubiti had the title the King of the North and South. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. He can say he's the king of the north and south in Kemet, but what about these other kings down here? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna have to get into that. There are some other kings that may have something to say about that, right? Now let's go. So the Nile gave meaning, right? The Nile, it was a body of a divine order. Okay, its current was a spiritual code. It gave spiritual knowledge, sacred knowledge, and its banks were aligned. Its banks were aligned with temples and the stars. Okay, along the banks of the Nile, there was several temples. Right. So, for example, we had the Edfu Temple, the Ko Ombo Temple, and the Grand Temple of Luxor or Waset. These were some of the temples that was lined up along the Nile River. That is awesome, right? So, that being said, I have my other favorite map here, and we have an illustration of the uh of Tamari or Kemet, right? And you notice along the Nile River from Nubia all the way up, you see major cities and major temples and locations, right? So, like we talked about last spring, we talked about Mennefer of Memphis. Okay, you had Saqqara. We had the Fayum. We had Payum. You notice the spelling; they did not have vowels. So we had Payum and Sadet, like we talked about. And notice Egypt is called Tamari or Tamawu, right? And when you see those remember the circle with the X, that's a place. And you see the little line with three dots on it, that's land, right? Tameru, beloved land. And you see along the Nile River, the Happy River, you see Asiyut, or we see the little we see these little shapes, little boxes. That means houses. These are locations, right? These are temples. And we have Mennefer at the very top, and then Waset in the south, the seat, in my opinion, the seat of power. And Waset, it was or thieves. Okay, you see it, Waset. And then we have those temples, Ibit, uh, Res or Ibis Sawut. Okay, Heracropolis, Naun, Edfu, Badit, Kaumbu, Nibit, and Aswan. Shout out to the Aswan fam down in the south, Bawu. Okay, and now we have the Valley of the Kings, set to rest, and their Amana. Okay, and then the Valley of the Queens, where the queens will be laid to rest. Right, and we have Nubia down here, but also remember these were different places. So we had Taseti, the land of the bow, which was a nome or location, and Wast Haru, okay, throne of Horus. Okay, so these were the various locations in Kemet. Okay, and their names and their spellings, right? It's pretty cool. Okay, but as you notice along the Nile, they had major monuments and locations from the south all the way up to the north. And remember, Abydos was a sacred place. Okay, Abydos was a sacred place to the point to where that is said that Osiris, the tomb of Osiris, is at that location. All right. and the tomb of Osiris is in that location. And then not far from there is Dendera and Nakata. All these places. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Ethiopia was called the place of beginnings. Okay, because the Blue Nile was born there, and the mountains were seen as the dwelling place of the Neteru of the ancestors. And get this, in the Iliad, in Homer's Iliad, Zeus was has it was said, I read it. It said that Zeus went to Ethiopia to place of the blameless Ethiopians. Okay, he went to where their gods were. Okay, and they regarded Ethiopians as the blameless Ethiopians. Okay. Now another thing. Notice the blue Nile here, and then the white Nile there. Okay. Well, hold on. We'll get to that in a second because we're going to show you where the Yellow Nile used to be. There was a place. There was a stream called the Yellow Nile, but I got to get to that in a second. Now, Kush, with its center at Napata and Meroe, was the spiritual navel because right when the Blue Nile and the White Nile connected, it was Khartoum. That was the seat of power for Kush. Okay. Here stood oracles, lion deities, kings crowned by divine fire. Now we discussed that video. We did in the video we discussed Apinamak in our previous video, Thrones of Fire, Temples of Light. Y'all need to check that out. We may have to go back and discuss the ancient Neteru and the royalty of Meroe. Let me know. Type in Kush if you want us to talk more about Kush. That really highlight that. Okay, let me know. And in Kemet, the most northern point became the land of refinement where the pyramids rose and sacred geometry encoded the rhythm and the cosmos. Three lands, one river. There was three sacred places, but one memory, three temples, one cosmology, because a lot of their deities and ancestors intertwined and connected. Okay. Now, get this. Now, dealing with the Yellow Nile. Dealing with the Yellow Nile. Um, we see the White Nile right here coming from Uganda and then the Blue Nile. Once upon a time, there was a Yellow Nile that extended westward towards Chad. Okay. It went towards Chad. And so when you have a lot of pundits and individuals who don't know how to read or write, who don't know their left hand from their right hand, tell you there was no connection between West Africa and the Nile Valley, they are mistaken. I'm not gonna say they're lying because they don't know, but they are sadly mistaken. They are sadly mistaken because we know that Lake Chad was a lot larger over 100 years ago. And the tributaries and the canals connected to a Yellow Nile. The Yellow Nile is dried up. It is over. It was in existence over 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. So these people would not only go up towards the Nile Delta, but they also went west. And what else did they bring? They brought their culture, they brought their knowledge, and they brought everything with them. Shout out to Baba Yakya and many others. And shout out to the fam in Hausa and the Fulani and many others. They say that they came from the Sudan and the Nile Valley. In their oral traditions, they say they came from the Nile Valley. All right. What are we gonna say? We're gonna argue with them, right? So yeah. So if you are enjoying the content, if you're enjoying the content, like and subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. If you want to know more about Ethiopia, Kush, and Kemet, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's learn together, right? Now, the three crowns, symbols of cosmic order. Yeah, we're gonna do some symbolism in this thing, right? We're gonna go into some details with that, right? But before we do, I got a question. I got a question. Now, here it is. It's serious. Afro beats or hip hop? Like and comment below. Yeah, let me know. Afro beats or hip hop. Like and comment below. Yeah, yeah. So the three crowns, symbols of cosmic order. These three crowns represented kings, represented rulership, and represented power. Okay, they were crowns that represented the cosmos, and to wear them was not just to rule over a physical land, but the spiritual lands, and to uphold the heavens, the earth, and the ancestors. So let's get to it. Let's get down to it. The white crown, the white crown, the hejet, right? So the hejet is a tall, conical, and conical is one of the oldest ritual crowns in Africa. In Kush, this crown took on a deeper spiritual meaning or spiritual force. It's combined with feathers or ram's horn. It symbolized a king chosen not by blood alone, but by a divine oracle and by knowledge. See, the priests of Amun and Napata were Napata were gatekeepers, as we mentioned before. There was gatekeepers of power. A Kushite king had to be confirmed by the ancestors, by oracles, by the priesthoods, and even signs. And to wear the white crown, to wear the white crown was to become the purifier. Okay, to be the purifier, the one sent to restore Ma'at and divine order. Because if you don't have Ma'at, if you don't have order, you have chaos or Isfet, right? Right. Now, here's Osiris right here, or Osar, because I get a lot of people in the comments saying it's not pronounced Osiris, it's Osar. Fine, fine, right? He's wearing the white crown with the feathers, and behind him is Aset or Isis and Nephthys. Okay, so he is wearing the white crown. Now, notice we have the Narmer palette, and we have King Narmer with the battle hammer in his hand, about to give somebody that work. All right, and on his head he has the white crown. Okay, so this is pre-dynastic. This was found in Nubia. This was not found in Cairo somewhere. Okay, this, remember, Kemetic culture is African culture, and that came from the south, right? So he has the white crown, and above him is Heteru. So we already know Heteru was 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 part of the cosmos, right? We have Heru there, and we have his name. So the white crown represented that culture, represented his rulership, and he came from the south. And also notice we have two men on the right, on the other side there, trying to tie two mythical or mythical beings or animals there. We don't know what they are, but we do know it's kind of, it symbolizes him tying the two nations together. Remember, there was several kings, several kingdoms that he had to subdue, but he did it. All right. And so, but they all had a similar kind of culture. They had Heteru there, they had Heru, and they had many others. So he had the white crown. Here's another example. Details from the Scorpion Mace head and Norma palette. We see him wearing the white crown and the scorpion in front of him going before him. And we have him wearing the red crown, the priest in front of him, and then the flag bearers, the standard bearers right there. Okay, holding up Heteru and some other figures. So now, so to wear the right crown was, like I said, to become the purifier. So under this crown, we have Pi, Piye, King Piye, a Kushite ruler, marched north, not in conquest though, but in sacred duty and authority, declaring Egypt has lost its way. There have been many times where Kush had to intervene and step in and do a reset. Remember, a lot of the kings came, or be it the kings or their wives came from Ethiopia or Sudan. And whenever Mother Nubia stepped in, it was to reset Kemet. Why? Because if Kemet fell, Kush could have failed and Ethiopia would have failed. Okay. Do you think that was right? Do you think that was right in stepping in, trying to reset things? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that was correct in trying to intervene. Okay, because as you know later on, we're gonna discuss that. We're gonna discuss some foreign invaders that did come in. So King Pi tried to do that, and we're gonna talk about King Pi in another episode, him and a few others. But let's get it. Now, the white crown, it represented the fire of the ancestors. It represented legitimacy by spirit, service to the divine or the Netzeru. And so that crown was sacred and it was important to have. Now we have the double crown, the Pesket or Second Tawi, the Second Tawi. Okay. The double crown. The double crown was the headpiece fused together, the red crown or the Deseret of Lower Egypt, which is the Nile Delta, up north, tied to the cobra goddess Wajet, and the white crown, Hedjet of Upper Egypt, Nubia area, tied to the vulture crown, Nekhbet. Now, we talked about the two ladies before. We did, right? Remember? Now, remember that episode we talked about the two ladies where the unification of the two ladies represented political unification and spiritual duality. Political unification and spiritual duality. Political unification is that the two ladies represented the harmonization of northern and southern traditions, securing the pharaoh's rule over both regions. Okay. Also, spiritual duality, they embodied the balance between wisdom and aggression, protection and retribution, ensuring that Egypt remained stable and prosperous. You had to be both. You had to be wise and a warrior too. Like, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. You had to be both. Okay. You had to be. Now, together, they symbolize the unity of opposites, north and south, chaos and order, earth and sky, and to wear the double crown was to become Heru. Okay, the child of cosmic balance, and the pharaohs were not. They were absolute monarchs. Okay, and we discussed dealing with the Book of Gates and Amduat how the pharaoh had to subdue that spiritual plane also. They were living mediators. They were mediators between the ancestors and the people in the city. They ruled in justice. They preserved harmony with the Netzeru. They had balance of the papyrus and lotus. And to fail was to lose divine favor and the crown too. Now, there's been times where we had to have that discussion. We talked about what happens when a pharaoh loses his power, step down. Like for example, Ramses III. Okay, and in my opinion, I think Ramses III was like the last pharaoh who had that true knowledge as to what it means to have and wear the double crown. Okay, Ramses III, his wife, basically betrayed him and wanted his stepson to take over. But he didn't. His stepson didn't have the knowledge or the information. Yeah, you may be once again you may be born king, but you need to be made king. His stepson Ramses the third stepson was not made king yet. Right? Let's go. So the solar Ethiopic crown. Okay, the solar Ethiopic crown. Now, we what happens is we focus on the Kemetic crowns, but we neglect the Ethiopic crowns. We gotta do them too. We gotta work on them too, right? This is the crown of light. It was inherited not through gold, but through lineage, right? The Kebra Nagast, which speaks of a line from Solomon to Sheba and to Menelik. The Ark of the Covenant carried to Aksum, the solar priest kings of Zigwe and Solomonic dynasties. The crown of light. This was more than just a just it wasn't just an aesthetic. It was a movement. It was more to that. So, for example, in my opinion, the crown was internal, not external. Okay, it was through knowledge and DNA, and it was only given to the ones who was worthy. Okay, it was only given to the ones who was worthy. Now, you may think this person shouldn't have leadership. That you may think this person shouldn't rule, but here they are. See what I'm saying? We gotta pay attention to that. People are here for a reason. Okay, and so in this case, they the they ruled from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. Okay, and that's just as sacred, right? Let's go. Now, here, the kings were seen as descendants of the sun, guardians of divine prophecy, keepers of the sacred scrolls written in ancient Ge'ez. Their crown was often a lion's mane, signifying submission not to man, but to God. Okay, you heard that the Lion of Judah and the tribe of David, and you heard those things. Okay, they really understood that. Okay, shout out to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. They really have a handle in that kind of knowledge and in that information. All right, and the crowns was a mirror to the cosmos. I think it was a mirror to the cosmos. Together, these three crowns created a sacred, like a trinity. Kush anchored the legitimacy through the oracles and ancestral fire. Kemet maintained cosmic balance, ritual kingship. Ethiopia preserved the solar covenant through bloodlines and light. They were all together. They weren't conflicting. There was three frequencies and three connections to the ancestors and the Netzeru. He who wore the crown became more than a king. He became the axis of the world. You see what I'm saying? Now, talked about the three. So far, we've talked about the land who remembers the three crowns, symbols of cosmic order. Now we're about to get into shared temples, the shared spirit, when the divide came, reuniting the ark, and book recommendations coming up. So let's get it. Let's go. Now, shared temple, shared spirit. Despite the differences in language, and because over time the languages did vary, or architecture, the spiritual codes of these nations were still in harmony. Like in the Pada oracles of Amun, selected kings, the same Amun was revered in Waset. I told you before, the Netzeru, they kind of they had the same ones. You see, there's an image of King Taharka sitting or standing in front of a ram, which was represented Amun. And we know Taharka, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Taharka was a king of Kush. In Axum, inscriptions to Ra appear beside the moon solar calendars, echoing Tahuti or Thoth or Jehuti. All three venerated lion deities, Sekhmet in Kemet, Epidemic in Kush, Lion of Judah in Ethiopia. Now, time does not allow me that I don't have the time to really lean into that. Now, I want to, y'all know I want to do this, but yeah, I want to do it, but I want to know if you guys want me to have this discussion. Would you like for me to discuss the connection between the Sphinx, the Heru and Maquette, with Sakhmet and Epidemic? Just type in line and we can go. If once again, if you want me to have a discussion, it's gonna be live too. We're gonna do that to have a discussion connecting the Heru and Maquette, the Sphinx, Sekhmet, and Epidemic. Just type in line and we'll roll from there. You know what I'm saying? I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. So the temples were aligned to stars and the stones encoded in sacred geometry. Um, yeah, and so of course we talked about in the thrones of fire and temples of light. We talked about the Kandaki queens and esoteric knowledge, ancient Kush. Check out that video, and we dealt with the lion temples of Naka, right? And here. Here's the Jesharu of Ebed Medinet Madi, the Holy of Holies, okay? The most sacred places. As we mentioned before, the Jesharu represented the mind, the sacred mind of that temple, which of course represented a body of a person. And of course, the magnificent Jesharu of Holies of Hatshepsut's mortuary temple in Bahari, I think. Yeah, I think that's Del Bahari. And we mentioned before in a video, and I'll put that video in the description somewhere, that this temple was broken down into three phases. Okay, the physical plane, or the 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 right in the middle, the stellar, and then I'm sorry, the physical plane, then the heavenly, and then the cosmos. So we have the initiate, and then we have the learner, and then the master. Three phases. Okay, life, death, and then resurrection or rebirth. Three different phases. Now we can further this discussion. We can go into it because each part of the temple represented something, and I do want us to go into further detail of that. But it represented three phases: youth, manhood, and adult age. Old age. Okay, 3 degrees. All right, but we did break it down a little bit, but but that is Hatshepsut temple. But I really want to discuss that, and so we will talk about the majestic gateway real soon too. All right, now when the divide came, what happened? What fractured this sacred arc connecting the three? What fractured that? What broke that? What happened? It wasn't time, it wasn't culture, but invasions. The Persian invasion, the Assyrians and the Roman Empire broke sacred alliances. New religions classified, called the ancient temples as pagan and backwards, and of course Europe carved Africa into false borders. And but the funny part is, even though you calling these temples pagan, you're building your churches and your mosque on top of those same places. It's strange. But the Nile never changed its path and never changed its course. These crowns, they're scattered, but they're never broken. But here's an example of somebody who tried to change that. King Taharka, one of the greatest rulers of the 25th dynasty of Egypt, came from the royal house of Kush, Nubia's powerful kingdom in the south. His reign was from 690 before Common Era to 664 before Common Era. He marked the time when the African kings ruled over a reunified Nile Valley. And remember, Egypt is an African nation. Just letting you know. Blending Nubian and Egyptian tradition under the vision of divine kingship and Ma'at. But this golden moment faced a storm, the rising power of Assyria, and in 671 BCE, Esarhaddon invaded and briefly took Memphis or Mennefer, Egypt's key northern stronghold, and Taharka regrouped, however, and launched a counterattack that temporarily reclaimed territory and reasserted Kushite control. And by the way, if you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button. So Taharka, he pushed back. He did what he could. Okay. But remember, for those who've been following, remember this time, this was the age and period where Kemet was already old. It's already like four golden ages have already passed, 4,000 years have already passed. Egypt is tired. The military is gone. The not basically the knowledge and the sciences are almost gone, right? So when the divide came, it was really nothing left. Okay. Egypt, what Egypt was fractured, was broken. There was no real instability there. Greece came in and Rome came in. They had their puppet leaders there, and then Nubia fortified themselves and pushed everybody out except for those who who were now indigenous of Nile Valley culture. Okay, so now we have the reuniting the arc though. Today, modern borders divide Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, as you can see, but memory still lives on in the people, the ritual, and in the diaspora. Modern scholars, spiritual guides, and cultural builders are reweaving the arc. We have museums, online temples, the Ujumbe podcast. We have people all over the diaspora. Shout out to the fam in Sudan and Ethiopia that's really trying to keep this knowledge alive. I know name some of these guys, their names escape me, but they are really sharing the knowledge of ancient Sudan from the Sudanese, not from the UK. Okay, and once I get their names, once I get that, I'll put the links in the description, some of their information out there too. This is a new priesthood, though. This is a new priesthood of remembrance, and you guys are watching right now, are a part of it. You see what I'm saying? So, the Nile, the happy river, rises in darkness, coming forth from that secret place, from the mountains of the moon. So, I'm telling you, you guys, thank you for walking with me through this, and drop a scroll, or hit a like, hit the like button, share this information with somebody who wants to remember, who wants to know. And next week we will be dealing with we got a few things up our sleeve, so we'll be dealing with a few things. So, oh, I forgot, Echoes of Nubia every other Thursday, and yep, next Sunday, live and in color, we're going to deal with the role of women, the queens of the Nile Valley, the priestess and prophetesses and mothers of the Nile Valley. Live next Sunday. Gonna get that. We're gonna get into that. And here's a few books. Here's a few books. I forgot about the books. The Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire, the African Dominion, and the Lost Ark of the Covenant by Tudor Parfit. Ethiopia, the origin, Ethiopians. Let me see. Ethiopia and the Origin of Civilization by John G. Jackson. The Ethiopians, A History by Richard Pankhurst, Egyptian Book of the Dead, are coming for by day. These are our books. The affiliate links in the description. As an Amazon affiliate, I earn from qualifying purchases. Check them out. Also, my book, okay, The Crusades and Jihad in East Africa, Religious Conflicts and Their Impact. Check that book out. We will be getting into that later on this summer. So we talked about the land that remembers the three crowns, shared temples, and shared spirit. When the divide came, reunited art, gave a few book recommendations. Listen to King Cam Ujumbe Podcast. Ujumbe means message. And today's message is the three crowns, Ethiopia, Kemet, and Kush before the divide. I will talk to you later.